Good evening. Welcome to the Longmont Museum. I'm Justin Veach. I'm the manager of the museum's Stewart Auditorium, and I curate public programs. Nice to see you out this evening. Thanks for coming. Before we get going, I want to thank a few folks who make our programming possible: the Scientific and Cultural Facilities District, the Stewart Family Foundation, the Friends of the Longmont Museum, and of course, our museum members. Do we have any museum members with us this evening? Hey. Thank you. Thank you, members. We simply can't do all that we do without you. If you're interested in finding out what it means to be a member of the Longmont Museum, feel free to grab me after the program or stop by our front desk, or maybe even catch one of those folks who raise their hand and ask them why they're a member of the Longmont Museum. I'm sure they'd be glad to tell you. I'd also like to thank our media sponsors, the mighty KGNU Community Radio out of dear old Boulder, just down the road, KUNC, and the Colorado Sound. And you know, I also want to thank you all for putting up with the hole in the ground that we've dug out here, and the mud and the gravel and the fencing. We're expanding. That's right, we're expanding. We're building a brand new 4,000 square foot gallery space, which will bring our gallery count up to 3, which means we'll have a dedicated children's space, a dedicated history space, and a dedicated rotating gallery space for traveling shows and in-house exhibitions. That's right, Boulder County's biggest museum is about to get bigger. That's right. But that means no exhibitions until next fall. I know, growing pains. But programs continue. Tonight's program is being offered as part of our Thursday Nights at the Museum series. If you didn't know, every Thursday evening we offer a little something: a film, a talk, a performance, you name it, a little bit of everything. I like to think of it as a potpourri of cultural delight, in case you're wondering. Tonight's program is actually offered as part of our Voices of Change series, and just a few words, not too many I hope, about Voices of Change. In the early days of the pandemic, I reached out to the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee with the idea of partnering on a series of programs designed to explore Longmont's history of social justice, with the idea of providing a space for people to share their experiences as members of historically marginalized and oppressed groups. LMAC was enthusiastic, and with much help and guidance from Carmen Ramirez and others, we launched the series with a pair of programs entitled The History of Race and Social Justice in Longmont, Parts 1 and 2. Since then, we've offered up 10 programs on subjects ranging from the Japanese American experience, the history of farm labor in Boulder County, and trans monologues with Motus Theater, to programs on Black Lives Matter, missing and murdered Indigenous relatives, and most recently, programs on immigration. This evening, we're pleased to welcome back Motus Theater, who will be joined this evening by our friends from the Boulder Phil. But before I turn things over, I want to be sure to thank some folks: Rita Valenti-Quinn, Cristian Solano-Córdova, and Alejandro Fuentes, Mena of Motus Theater, and Mimi Kruger and Fernanda Nieto of the Boulder Phil for all their hard work in making this evening possible. I especially want to thank the Longmont Multicultural Action Committee for their continued support for this series. And last but not least, surely not least, and on behalf of Motus, the Boulder Theater, and the museum, I want to extend our deep appreciation and heartfelt thanks to Bob Browdis and Nancy Claremont for their support of this program through their family fund. Bob and Nancy, thank you. Without further ado, please welcome Fernanda Nieto and the Boulder Phil String Quartet.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Justin. It's an honor to be here tonight with all of you, and I want to thank Motus and the Longmont Museum for having us here. I'm Fernanda Nieto, Director of Education and Community Engagement with the Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra. As you know, musicians go on stage, get clapped, go home. When we started talking about tonight, we knew it wasn't going to be that, and that is why we're here, because there is an incredible amount of work that storytellers and musicians have in common, and that is to be artists of today's time. And so approaching this work and choosing selections for you to listen to as a response to the monologues felt truly like being invited into sacred spaces. And we couldn't say no. And we couldn't be more grateful for Bob and Nancy and their support to this endeavor. So thank you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce to you Cristian Solano-Córdova.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. Thank you so much, Fernanda. My name is Cristian Solano-Córdova. I am Motus Theater's Director of Communications, Outreach, and Development, as well as a monologuist with Motus Theater's Immigrant America project. My pronouns are also he, they. Thank you all so much for making it out tonight. And just a quick friendly reminder to please silence your phones, because you're in for a treat with the music tonight. For those of you who don't know Motus Theater, we create original theater, facilitating dialogue on critical issues of our time. We use the power of art to build alliances across diverse segments of our community and country. A central focus of our work is developing autobiographical monologues with community leaders who are impacted by injustice and violence within the criminal legal system, the immigration system, or otherwise targeted by dehumanizing rhetoric and policies, with the aim of creating inclusive and equitable communities. We work with leaders who tell powerful monologues about their lives, hopes, and dreams, and then we feature these monologuists center stage in the American drama. So before we begin, I wanted to do my shout-outs too from Motus Theater. Special thank you to Bob and Nancy. Bob Browdis and Nancy Claremont's Family Fund helped make this event possible, so thank you all so much, as well as Justin Veach and the Longmont Museum Stewart Auditorium for inviting us here to share with you 3 monologues from the Immigrant America project. And we are super in luck to have musical responses from the Boulder Phil String Quartet. And I also wanted to start by acknowledging that we are gathering upon occupied, unceded territory, the ancestral homeland of the Arapaho, Ute, and Cheyenne, and that much of this country's wealth was built not only on stolen land, but on the stolen labor of many different peoples. It is only by acknowledging the mistakes of our past and investing in reparations and equity that we can work to build a more just future for all of us. So today we are excited that Laura Peniche, Alejandro Fuentes, Mena, and myself will be sharing with you our monologues. These monologues were developed in collaboration with each monologuist and Motus Theater's artistic executive director, Kirsten Wilson, as part of an 18-week Motus monologue workshop. During each monologue, acclaimed Colorado violinist Anthony Salvo will be playing an underscore developed between him and Kirsten for each monologue. Then, after each monologue, we will welcome Fernanda Nieto back to the stage to introduce each of the pieces that the Boulder Phil's String Quartet will play for you. So, with that, please join me in welcoming back Fernanda Nieto.
So I will tell you why this piece is first in the program. Part of what we struggle with today is, how do we do this? How do we fill ourselves, what do we fill ourselves with to survive in a world that gives us too much of everything at once? So I wanted you to have beauty to fill yourselves with as the beginning of this program. Dvorak was a Czech composer. He was invited to teach in New York, and in the summers he went to write music during his vacation time. He wrote this quartet, which was later called American Quartet, using some music that he was truly mesmerized with, and that was music of African American people and music of indigenous people. And he said, this is a true essence of American music. I think it's sort of an irony, and a beautiful irony, that it was an immigrant who found what the true American essence is. And this is why you're gonna get to hear this. He wrote this also in 1893. I didn't know this when I was learning about it, but this was also called the year of the panic of 1893 because of the economic turmoil that the country was in. The year before, Ellis Island was starting to welcome immigrants, And things were not easy, and it was a very divisive time. And if any of that sounds familiar to you, I think this piece will be a good reminder that this is the most important work of artists, to remind people that our legacy is to tell stories and to make beauty. I hope you enjoy.
weeping. So I just want to thank you again, Boulder Phil, for being here. And thank you all, too, for being here, taking time out of your day. So the title of my monologue is Wandering in the Desert. I need to talk to my fellow Christians. I know immigration is not a topic that is comfortable, but we need to have this conversation. Many of you may not know that I'm in pain right now, and that you, perhaps without realizing it, might have contributed to my pain. I share my heart knowing that you are good people. I have seen you help out at church, at the shelters, take care of the elderly, bring food to people in need. And I know that most of you don't really mean for all immigrants to be deported. And so I don't understand why so many of you are helping elect leaders who are campaigning on promises of mass deportations. Many in my faith family tell me that I don't need to worry, that they will be there to protect me, and they won't let anybody take me personally. But some of those same people are helping to elect leaders who have the intention of separating families from their children, deporting millions of immigrants who are here just trying to provide for their families. We often get disappointed because our politicians don't always fulfill their promises. And in this case, I know many of you are actually counting on our elected officials to not deliver on promises to deport all the undocumented immigrants of this country. But these hopes are not enough for me right now. When I'm being told that I need to fill out an emergency plan for my children's school so that they know who they need to call in the event that ICE picks me up. The thought alone of this possibility is forcing me and my children to live with so much anxiety. I really don't think that you want my children to be taken into foster care, to be left up for grabs, to a destiny without their mother. There is a teaching in the New Testament about a woman who was about to be killed by a mob because of her sins. But despite her transgressions, Jesus stood up for her by challenging those who had never committed a sin to throw the first stone. And so there was no person able to throw a stone at the woman. Of course, some Christians may feel my family and I have committed a transgression for coming here undocumented. But if you know me, you know that we didn't come here to cause harm. We were simply hungry and we needed bread. We were thirsty and we needed water. We were being persecuted, but we chose life and freedom. I want you to know, from what I have seen in my community, most people who came here undocumented are just like my family. They came here just trying to survive. We would have chosen a safe and legal path without wandering in the desert, without the cold and freezing nights, without the cactus and thorns digging into our feet, without the threats of robbers or smugglers, without having to carry tired little children for miles and miles. If there would have been another way. I also know from my personal experience that we were not alone in our journey. We were held by God's hand into this country. And when I see the beautiful faces of my children who were born here, I know that I was meant to be here. And I am so grateful to be part of my community in our country. But I am speaking now because I can no longer sit in silence with you at church or in our faith while watching my friends and family get deported back across that desert that we risked everything to cross, to be called harmful names, told that we can live in the shadows and pick the fruit, but we cannot eat the fruit. Told that because we were born in a different country, this country will never accept us. No matter how hard we work, no matter how much we give, we cannot sit at the table with other Americans. There are too many families suffering, being separated. Too many refugees in this country that are being sent back to their deaths. There are too many of us devastated by the pressing circumstances around us, like watching the little children in cages, exposed to illness, abuse, tear gas, and the mothers of fathers and mothers, and the realization that at any moment our beautiful lives as we know them could be over. I find guidance in the teachings of Jesus and in the way that he stood up to a mob to save a life. I pray that my fellow Christians will stand with me, stand against cruel immigration policies, help me save the lives of my family, my friends, and all the other undocumented immigrants in this country who are just trying to give their children a better life. If you believe in Jesus, you know that Jesus loves you. So when you think of my children, my family, and the undocumented immigrants in this country, please remember God's commandment that we should love one another the same way he loves us. We are imperfect humans. Everyone has done things that can be considered a transgression. I know I have, you have, and I believe our elected leaders have too. But we always have the choice to learn from our past, to continue to love one another, and to stand together in God's love. Thank you.
When I first read Laura's words in her monologue, I felt really uncomfortable about my place in the church. And I thought a lot about how it is that as human beings, we have found a way to justify discrimination, oppression, and thinking that any human life can have less value than ours. And of course, when you think about church music, you think about Amazing Grace, which is our next piece. And the story also gives us hope, because it is the story of somebody who went from being a slave trader to a slave abolitionist. And the title, as I read her incredible words, also made me think, what is it that we need to do to reclaim the value we have lost for human life and the grace we deserve to ourselves and for one another?
used to be... Hello. Hey. What's up, everybody? That used to be one of my favorite songs when I used to go to church. There was something so humbling about just being able to like sing in mass choir with everybody just surrounding you, you hearing one person's voice there, you hearing yours. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Anyways, so friggin' gorgeous. Thank y'all. Remember that we had that moment because my piece is a little impactful. I think, especially in the times that we are living right now, I sort of feel this, what I believe is righteous rage that builds up in my heart. And I'm hoping that whether it's through kind words or the love or through the righteous rage, that somewhere along that line, people are just moved towards action. And so my piece is called Deport Me. I was just a kid when I realized what being undocumented meant. At age 8, I started going to work with my dad, helping him rebuild the entire outside of other people's homes, all the while not having a real home of our own. I would help my dad research and work out all the math. I would discover that for one given job, people would charge $20,000. My dad had been screwed over so many times that he would only charge $15,000. Clients would see his strength in his strength in Spanish, his lack of English and documented status, and give him about $10,000. And that is who my father believed he was. Half the man I thought he was, half the value of any other. I witnessed how my mother would leave for an entire weekend, 72 hours, to take care of someone else's family. She was lured with the promise of being paid over $300 for the weekend, but she would come back with only $100 in her pocket. $100 that she still somehow saw as a blessing. $100? I saw that as an attack on my family. All those rich families saw little value in everything my mom did for them. They would take her away only to use her and spit her out. The money they paid her was barely enough to put food on the table. It didn't cover the worry my mom had because she couldn't be home to take care of us when we were sick, help us with our homework, comfort us when we returned to an empty house. $100 for a whole weekend away from her family, like she was worthless? But don't you understand that she was priceless to me? Well, spending those weekends without my mom as she cared for other people's children, and spending those same weekends working with my dad for free for the privilege of building a home for someone else's family, and witnessing this over and over and over and over again, I began to think that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't worth much either. Despite the fact that I had been recognized at school as gifted and talented, despite the fact that I was a math whiz, learned English, a completely unknown language, in less than a year, and that I was an engaged student, despite the fact that I was a precocious worship leader at my church, I let those weekends of feeling worthless affect me. I began making jokes rather than making plans for my future, playing games rather than paying attention, chasing girls rather than chasing my dreams. And like all self-fulfilling prophecies, I got to the point where my grades reflected exactly what this society said me and my parents were worth. Half-priced human beings. But luckily, I had a teacher named Miss Kovacic who worked hard to remind me of my value and helped convince me that what this society was saying about me and my family was wrong. With her support, and that of many others, I got myself out of that pit of self-deprecation, past the insecurities, past the hate, past the negativity, past that half version of me, into a good college, and into a position where I am now an educator who teaches math. And like my mentors, I teach young children their value because all children are valuable just as you and I are valuable. As a teacher, I can't help myself. And I'm gonna need to hear the answer for this one. I'm gonna take y'all to school for a few seconds. I hope you're good with that. Y'all good with that? All right, fantastic. My mother is one woman, one of the strongest and most compassionate individuals in my life. My father is one man, one of the hardest workers that I know. My sister is one daughter, a brat, but a lovable one, and now a mother of 3 and an American citizen. And I am one son, half of this country and half of Chile, and we are 4 whole, beautiful gifts, indivisible with liberty and justice for all, not the half-priced individuals that society has attempted to make us. Moving to applied math and economics. If this country continues to deport the undocumented community, it is missing out on courageous, strong, intelligent, family-loving, hardworking people of great value. And it's not only our loss, it's your loss to miss out on us. Not to mention the billions in taxes that we bring in every single year, which, by the way, is billions more than large corporations are paying. Lastly, moving beyond math to ethics. Paying an undocumented person half the value of their life's work, extracting all you can get from them to build your homes and take care of your families, and then deporting them as if they have not brought value? That's not just mathematically flawed. It's an American math story problem gone wrong. It is criminal to treat us as subservient and less desirable. I'm living in this country undocumented, teaching your children, and sometimes your adults, supporting them, engaging their minds in math and in their dreams. I'm 100% here, and I'm 100% committed to this country in which I was raised, this country that constantly seeks to spit me out. Lose me and you lose my value. Not just the money I pay into taxes or money I pay into Social Security that I will never be able to benefit from. But you lose my ability to inspire, connect, and engage. You lose my ability to bring an impact. And you lose the knowledge that I bring to my students who are your children. This country would be foolish to lose me. So, deport me. Deport me. But I really hope that in the end you realize it's your loss. Thank you.
There's a change in the program with the next piece you'll hear because a baby chose to be born this week. This is not Ryan, this is Matthew Diekman. He calls himself the Diek, and he's one of our violists at the Boulder Philharmonic Orchestra. So this is not a violin, this is a viola. And this truly was one of the pieces that I thought about when I first curated this whole program. So I'm glad that it, by serendipitous, decision of the universe, made its way into the program. This is by Rebecca Clark, a British composer, and it's called "I Will Bid My Heart Be Still." And as I thought about it, of course, it's based on a poem that has a romantic connotation to it, but the idea of stillness is what caught my attention. And this is an invitation for you to spend some time in stillness, in silence, as you continue to ponder all of these really amazing stories you've heard tonight and these really important topics. Thank you.
are we to be in the company of these amazing musicians. Thank you so much, Tika and Fernanda. I'm back, y'all. Like I said earlier, my name is Cristian. I started writing portions of this monologue way back in 2017. During the first Trump administration, he tried to end the DACA program, and part of this monologue was in a speech that I gave to like 3,000 students at a area campus who had walked out to protest the rescission of DACA. And I was sharing some of this with them so to give them courage, because it seemed like things were going to get rough. And now I'm still giving this monologue 8 years later, and a lot of the things that we've been ringing the bell about, or ringing the alarm about, are even more pressing now. So it's my monologue. It's called The Meaning of Courage, and I hope it helps you find courage in these trying times. When I was my baby sister's age, I didn't have many worries. And it's funny because my baby sister, the Nayi, well, she's an American citizen, so things should be easier for her. But they're not, especially not right now, because the people she loves the most in this whole entire world, our mom, our other sister, Beba, and I, we're all undocumented. And when we're threatened, she is threatened. So my baby sister is forced to bear the burden of political attacks on immigrants. I remember election night 2016. My mom and I were in complete shock, trying to absorb what had just happened to the country, trying to strategize about how to handle certain possibilities. I remember frantically Googling, what happens to a U.S. citizen child if an undocumented parent is deported? My dad died young, so I needed to assure myself that if my mom was deported, that my sister Beba or I could get custody of the Nayi, who at the time was only 8. But then, of course, what would happen if both Beba and I were deported? My mom and I totally lost track of time during our election night panic, so when hours later I came downstairs, I was surprised to find my baby sister, the Nayi, wide awake, sitting in a corner by herself, crying, red-faced with puffy eyes. And with my dad gone, I always had to be the big brother, or rather father figure, since our mom was always working. I helped the Nayi with her homework, we read each other bedtime stories, we played games. I tried to answer those unanswerable kinds of kid questions and comfort her when she was scared. But I wasn't used to having to comfort her when in reality I needed so much comforting myself. I remember tilting her chin, glistening with streams of tears toward me, looking into those deep brown eyes and trying my best to give her soothing answers to some of the most difficult questions. And just repeating over and over again, don't cry. Baby, don't cry, please. I promise, whatever happens, it's gonna be okay. Listen, why would you be deported? Do you even know what that word means? You shouldn't have to. But listen to me. You are an American citizen, and you will never be deported. You're right, I'm not a citizen, but I've got DACA. They can't deport me. Yes, I know Mom doesn't have DACA, but she's lived here for decades. She's not going anywhere. Baby, don't cry, please. I promise, whatever happens, we'll be together, always. I'll be there to put Band-Aids on your scraped knees. I'll be there to help you with your school projects. Yes, we're gonna finish reading Harry Potter together. I'll be by your side when you need help applying for college. I'll be there for you when you fall in love for your first time, when your heart is broken. And I'll walk you down the aisle one day, and it really doesn't matter where, as long as we're together. And yes, of course the puppy's coming with us if we go. Lulu's part of this family too, I'll have you know. Yeah, that's the dimply smile I like to see. It's gonna be okay. At least that's what I told her. I did my best to offer her what I wanted to hear, what I wanted to believe, not just for her, but our entire family. Because how do you talk to a child about being taken away from their parent or their siblings without terrorizing them, without stripping them of their innocence? And then, with each passing day of the first Trump administration, watching kids being taken from their parents at the border, the increased deportations of parents like my mom, the attempts to end the DACA program that protects me and my sister Beba from deportation, the willingness to end rules that prevent children from being indefinitely detained, and even threats to strip children like the Nayi of their citizenship. With all these mounting threats, it felt increasingly cruel for me to offer my baby sister what amounts to be a fairy tale, when in reality, she might need great strength to overcome great threats. So tonight, I offer you and her another story. And this story won't kiss it and make it all better, but I'm hoping it'll help us stay strong, regardless of any challenges that we might face. I was just 3 years old, and my sister Beba was just 1 when we crossed the border with our mom. We walked together with a group of 10, 15 people across the desert. We walked for hours and hours at night. I remember we were out in the middle of nowhere, following some dim silver light in the distance. I imagined we followed it because it meant we were going the right way, towards some shining city on a hill. And we finally got to a raised road lined with street lamps. And to avoid walking over the road at night and potentially being seen, we crossed through a drainage tunnel under the road. Mom had me walk through the tunnel in front of her as she crawled behind with my sister in her shawl. And Beba and I, we were wearing those little kid slide-up shoes that everybody was going crazy over that year. Mom had saved up a lot of money to buy them because we were going to be seeing our dad after a year of him being in the U.S. on his own, and she wanted us to look our best. And those shoes, they're actually super helpful, helping to light the way for all the people crawling on their hands and knees. But of course, in the dead of night, in the middle of the desert, they were a dead giveaway. We were finally able to see the moonlight at the end of the tunnel and catch a whiff of fresh air. The coyotes urgently requested my mom take off my shoes. "There's a border patrol car parked outside," he whispered. The drainage tunnel emptied out right next to a gas station where the border patrol car was parked. The officers were inside, we assumed, so we waited a while hoping they'd return to their car and drive away. But nobody was coming out, and for some reason, the coyotes grew impatient and abruptly told everybody to move. And in the chaos, everybody immediately scrambled, crawling behind tall grass on their hands and knees, as the coyotes gave us voiceless commands with their fingers on their lips and pointing to the ground. But the ground was covered in cactus thorns and pricklies, and I didn't have any shoes. And while everyone else crawled, my mom stood up, carrying both Beba and me in her arms, and she just started walking. And at first I thought we'd be seen because, everybody else was still on the ground, crawling on their hands and feet. But my mom stood up tall and walked with a defiant pep in her step, as if she belonged right there where she stood. That's when I realized she hadn't given up. She just had faith that walking quickly and quietly was her best strategy to protect us. She was resolved that somehow, somewhere, that we would be okay and we'd find a place where our family could thrive. And I've never forgotten the look on my mom's face as she walked out into the darkness of an unknown country. That's when I first realized that the real meaning of courage is not to pretend to be immune from fear, but rather to calmly and steadily take action in spite of it. Our current president and some of his followers, they continue to caricature my little 3-year-old self as a diseased, toddler, criminal, murderer, rapist, gang member in the making. They have succeeded into scaring many good people who don't know any undocumented immigrants into believing that a mother carrying her children to safety is nothing less than an invasion. But Beva and I, we grew up beloved by our friends, by our neighbors. We became strong members of our communities. We both went to college. I even became student body president of my university. I'm not part of some invading army fighting against America, but like many of you, I'm here fighting for the American ideals I know we can live up to. And leaders in the current administration still want to take away my baby sister's right to citizenship. But I remain hopeful that maybe the Nayi or some other young woman in our audience here tonight might one day be our future president and actually lead us to that future where we truly live up to those values of liberty and justice for all of us. But that reality is going to take a lot of hard work, and not just on the part of the immigrant community or on my part, but on your part too. We each have courageous opportunities to treat others as we hope to be treated, and to never stand idly by while another's human or civil rights are threatened, because your own rights might be next. And even the smallest acts can have the biggest impact. As Anne Frank once wrote in her famous diary, how wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Thank you.
The last piece you'll hear was written by Manuel Ponce, a Mexican composer. And I want to read to you what he said when thinking about writing music that would reflect his own identity. He said, "I consider the duty of every Mexican composer to ennoble his country's music by giving it artistic form, attiring it in the garb of polyphony, and lovingly conserving the popular music that is the expression of the country's soul." So he thought about his value. He thought about the value of his music. And he makes this sort of call for lovingly conserving that. That is what every immigrant who's come to this country tried to do, lovingly conserving their soul. I hope you enjoy his last piece.
That's one of it's nostalgia central, that song for me. Thank y'all so much. Please give them another round of applause. Boulder Phil String Quartet. And also a big round of applause to Laura, Alejandro, and Anthony from Motus. Right, so now we're gonna transition to a short Q&A with the monologuist and Boulder Phil's Fernanda Nieto. And we do have about 10 minutes for reflection and discussion. But before we begin, let's take a few moments, because these stories can be kind of heavy, right? So let's take a few big breaths, close your eyes if you're comfortable, and just notice what you're feeling in your body. What's coming up after hearing these stories and listening to this amazing music. Just take a couple breaths. All right, open them back up, y'all. We are about ready. All right. Have Abby come down. Do we have any audience reflections that you'd like to share and what most impacted you about hearing the stories or the music? Oh, Justin over here. Yes, any hands? Oh, almost. Come on, don't be shy. We're building community here. These are all friends and neighbors, I assume. Yes, right here.
Let me get you the microphone here.
Yeah.
This was beautiful and touching, and thank you for sharing your stories. I do not know any undocumented immigrants. Now I do, and I would love to give you all hugs. And thank you to the Boulder Phil for making this a beautiful, touching evening. And I have an ignorant question to ask, not knowing anything, about the lives of undocumented. How do you get a job as a school teacher being undocumented?
I'm undocumented, but I have the privilege of DACA, which is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It was a policy that up until 2012 to 2016 existed that allowed individuals who had come before the age of 16, had been here for at least 4 years, didn't have any run-ins with law. What else am I missing? Like 4 or 5 other things. Had to be working or studying, could get a stay from deportation and a work permit that allowed them to work. And that's how I actually became one of the first 2 documented teachers in the nation back in 2013 through Teach for America.
I just want to follow up and say I'm glad you're teaching our kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, any other reflections? Don't be shy, y'all. Come on.
All questions are welcome.
All right, one in the back.
I thank you, and I really appreciate your stories. I was part of the sanctuary movement in the 80s and helped bring people across the border to Costa Rica from Nicaragua. And I wish I could say the world was a better place. And I just really appreciate you bringing a moment of humanity into a time that seems like it's vanishing. And so I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for tonight.
Thank you.
I am blown away by what you presented and what I don't get and what I can figure out is how do we do anything? I know I want to. I know so many people who want to, who listen to these unbelievable experiences and it just evokes more, what do? I know we can vote someone out, maybe, but that's...
Easy question.
Yeah, do you want to try it? Yeah. Before working at Motus as staff, I worked as an immigrant rights advocate for 6-7 years. So policy advocacy, the thing is, the federal government, may be acting kind of crazy right now, right? Showing up masked, unmarked cars, kidnapping people off the streets. But I think we have to also realize that we have a lot of power in our state and local elections, right? It's not just about the federal government. The whole structure of this government was meant to be about dividing powers between the federal and state governments and then the state and local governments. So I think something that, we can do is local work, organize locally. There's some, pro-immigrant protections and some protections for trans and non-binary communities that are passed at the state level, but it's up to the municipalities to implement them. And so oftentimes it takes, communities in those municipalities to actually get those municipalities to act and implement those laws or implement them well. So, I know it seems so overwhelming, right? Trying to figure out how to, change the federal government because it's a beast, right? But we can do what we can do here, with our neighbors. I think one of the things is I feel like technology has really alienated us from our communities. So you already took one step today, showing up here in person, meeting people, and having conversations. That's the first step. And if you just keep doing that, words change hearts and minds, and not just the ones on stage, but the conversations had, with just at church or your temple or mosque or, parent-teacher night. Your teachers care about these issues oftentimes because their jobs are also being impacted by these policies, right? So there's a lot of different things that you could do, but my suggestion is focus locally. Does anybody else?
Do you have something?
Thank you for that question, because the reason someone like me has courage to come on stage is only because I feel so well supported by my community around me. So I know that there must be someone in your community, maybe you don't know them yet, who just need a friend to stand up next to them and say, hey, can I get a ride to the hospital? Many people can't drive because they don't have a license. It's too risky. So there's just so many little things in our community that we could do for one another. I think the main thing is getting connected. I know right now, as we're speaking right now, the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition is having a webinar to let people know how they can get involved. And so just follow those organizations that are doing all the work, and just talk to friends over here. And I know there's so much work to do out there that they'll be happy to have you on board.
Yeah. Outside of CIRC, AFSC has a rapid response hotline. A rapid response hotline is an opportunity for individuals to either be hotline operators, be individuals who are AKA dispatchers, individuals who show up and let people know of their rights, individuals who are willing to go around and confirm whether or not there's ICE activity. If you want to get that hands-on, there is the opportunity to do that. And honestly, it's my dream that we'll end up replicating what is happening in different parts of California right now, which is California people are organizing to such a degree that they will have individuals driving around tailgating individuals who are from ICE, figuring out where they're at. They have a whole conversation with individuals who are tow truck drivers, and as soon as they see them illegally parked, they have individuals coming in and towing their cars. It's so beautiful. Honestly, outside of that, it requires a narrative change, right? Like, I thank you for your vulnerability and like the idea of like recognizing like, ooh, most of the fear, most of the misunderstanding comes from like literally not knowing somebody who has those life experiences. I grew up in the church. I used to be super anti-trans, super anti-LGBTQ because I didn't know anybody or anybody who was willing to say it out loud. And I thought that I was being a good Christian and a good person by being all like, I'm gonna tell them how wrong their lives are because that way they won't end up in hell and eternal damnation. Not realizing that the love that I see within queer community sometimes far surpasses what I see in heterosexual couples. My parents should not be married, straight up, but they are because they follow the letter of the law and they made a commitment under the eyes of God. But I see more love in the friendships that are held by people who I would have once considered sinning. So, and it was all because I got to know them. So if you don't know anybody, we have some podcasts. No, not podcasts. What are they called? Yeah, podcast. Yeah, where each of our stories are shared not only by ourselves, but somebody of notoriety ended up reading our stories. And so if you don't know a person that's undocumented, feel free to share our stuff. And then be willing to be all like, do you want to have a conversation about that? Because sometimes it's just a conversation away. So, thank you.
And I just wanted to add, there is an organization here in Longmont called El Comité, like Committee of Longmont, but in Spanish. And, you know, they are part of the Colorado Immigrant Rights Coalition. They do a lot of great work. I assume some of y'all might already be connected, but if you don't, that's
I
a good
just want to
one.
give everyone the phone number to put in their phone right now of CERC. Are you ready? Get your phone out or copy it down, because if you see ICE doing something, you call and you get an immediate response, because there's many of us volunteers who will go shout out at apartment buildings, go witness. And the important thing is that the people who are getting picked up are seen. We actually have disappeared families in the state of Colorado. We don't know where they went. And so it's really important that all of us step up and do this really important work. And it's people like me who are white that need to be on the front lines. So I want to give you the phone number. It's 844-864-864-864-8341. 8341. Very trained, skillful people. Thank you.
Hi. First of all, this is the third or fourth time I've heard some of your stories, and each time it gets more and more powerful, not less. And I thank you very much for them. So, among other things, I help run an organization, the Boulder Area Sanctuary and Immigration Coalition, which is a faith-based organization. I also work with the Interfaith Immigration Network, and we're doing many, many things. So if you're looking for something, you can go to boulderbasic.org, and there's a chart of what you can do. It's color-coded from green to things that are very safe, through yellow, orange, and red, which are things you can get in a lot of trouble for if they decide they want to. And so you can pick, and there's a lot of different things on that chart. Or you can see me afterwards anytime. Boulder Basic, the Boulder Area Sanctuary and Immigration Coalition, and boulderbasic.org.
I also want to add one more thing that you can do, and this one is like biased as hell. So, my wife runs an organization called Convivir Colorado. That's hard to spell, Convivir, Colorado. And what I will tell you is right now, a lot of, because of the pressures of the federal government, a lot of organizations like her, she supports immigrant youth, immigrant, refugee, and first-generation American youth to find the power in their narrative by using arts, by using leadership. And organizations like her, grantors are afraid to put money there. They fear the repercussions. So if you are all willing to donate to organizations like Convivir Colorado, to organizations like Juntos, to CERC, to all of these Boulder Basic, El Comité, Longmont, like all of these organizations that are actually facing a whiplash financially, that is actually super helpful because you might not have the time, but they are committed to making the time. And so the more that you are willing to just put your money where your mouth is and not let it just reside in your heart and move towards action, it's actually super duper helpful at this time. And my wife would really appreciate the support.
And speaking of El Comité, we do have a program scheduled for this Sunday at 2:30. We're going to be having a conversation with the executive director, Lisa Moreno, on the 45-year history of El Comité, how it started, what it's been up to, and what it's facing now. It's free. It's at 2:30. You're all invited. Bring your friends.
Lovely. Thank you so much. All right. Well, I wish we could keep going. Well, let's do one last reflection, and then we have to close.
Well, I just want to thank you for raising the question about what Christians are doing with their votes. I think I'm a part of a faith community, and we keep raising that question about how can people not be voting for others rather than themselves.
Thank you. Before we close out, I wanted to hand the mic over to the folks at the String Quartet and Fernanda. Would y'all like to share anything about what impacted you about listening to the stories tonight, about conversation we're having here tonight?
Sure. First of all, this is my first time to do one of these Motus events, and fantastic, y'all. Just beautiful. I guess I have as a very white man, I have a parallel story. I lived with a family in San Antonio that for a time housed a couple of undocumented folks that were part of our family, our neighbor family, and for me, growing up in the safety and privilege of Middle America, that was a real eye-opener, and talking about those issues now some 15 years ago, and like you were talking about the alarm bells that have been sounding louder and louder and louder as we just seem to just be falling like right now, and so anyway, thank you for bringing that back for me, and I'm happy to have been a part of it, so thank you.
Hi, I'm first generation American actually. My parents are immigrants, and my dad has lost his green card and has not been able to reapply for it. So yeah, it's really meaningful to be a part of this.
Well, I didn't know I was going to be playing this until like Monday night. So I'm really glad that I was asked to fill in for Ryan. My grandfather on my mom's side, the saying was he was either from Mexico City or he was from St. Louis, and we never knew the real answer. So I'm happy that I was able to be here this evening and hear your stories, and yeah, they're very impactful, and yeah, thank you.
This is the second time I've heard these stories, and I would have to agree that every time I hear it, a little more of it affects me. And I think I feel that every time I hear it, I try to think of, is there something I could be doing? And I think about the way that music really does connect us all, and that I've had some opportunities in the past. I taught for a Title I school in Edgewater, which is not necessarily an area you would think would have this level of undocumented, I suppose, families. But I ran a little violin program after school, and 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders came to me once a week on Wednesday. And I think these stories that you all told reminded me just how bright and shiny all of them are. You know, all these beautiful kids were, and just how much pride they took in doing things, just like kids that I teach now that are really look more like me, come from families that don't have to worry. And we would have a concert every semester, and I would see them. And I never really had a dress code that I enforced. I'd say, well, wear whatever you want, but you can look nice if you want, you know. And they'd come in their best jeans, and their hair all done. Their moms would, especially the little ladies, would have all their hair done, and families would bring the entire family, you know, all the kids and all the uncles and all the grandparents. And it was so lovely to watch. They were so proud. The kids were proud. Their parents were proud. And I'm just glad to be part of this, because they all matter. We all matter. So thank you.
There's nothing I could say that hasn't been said. I too found myself asking, what can I do? I'm also an immigrant. I came to study, very different situation. But my heart is every day with the hearts of the immigrants who haven't had that much privilege for no apparent reason. So when I found myself thinking, what can I do? I realized quickly the biggest danger was to think, there's no hope. I can't do anything, really, because they're going to keep winning, and it's all terrible. And the place where I find hope, and the place where I find food for my soul, besides these amazing stories we have heard tonight, is music. And what I want to share is that taking care of your heart and taking care of other people's heart go hand in hand. So if you have enough privilege in your life to do something for others, move to action and do it, and keep filling yourself with the beauty that you need to be strong enough to do the work that needs to be done, because it truly takes all of us. I want to thank all of you, all of Motus, all of you for being here. And again, I will say what I said at the beginning to finish. Musicians are not trained to do this. And it takes, and we've had 4 beautiful musicians on stage sharing their hearts with us. So thank you for the 4 of you and for sharing what you've shared with us tonight.
All right, y'all are amazing. Thank you so much, everybody. Please give them a big round of applause. Close out the night. And then also Anthony Salvo. Give him a big round of applause. A huge thank you to Bob and Nancy from Bob Browdis and Nancy Claremont Community Engagement Fund. Shout out, thank you. And of course, the Longmont Museum for hosting us today. And Justin, thank you so much.
And Vinny in the back.
Yes, and Vinny doing tech in the back, thank you. If you'd like to hear more about Motus performances or volunteer with Motus, we have some materials up at the front. We have a little table. We also have some little postcards that have links to our monologues, to the podcast that Alejandro was talking about. So if you want to take that, you can share it with somebody, send it through the mail, or just scan it and share the link if you'd like. Please fill out the eval in the program for the Longmont Museum. That really helps us improve our programming and get better at what we do. So thank you all so much for making it out tonight. We really appreciate you. And tonight's, one action you already took to organize your community. So thank you all so much for being out here with us, and have a good night.